Robert Harrison had built an empire by the age of 35. His investment firm occupied 3 floors of a Manhattan high-rise, and his name appeared regularly in business journals. Success had come easily to him, perhaps too easily. He had learned to calculate risks, to analyze opportunities, to make decisions without hesitation. But some decisions he would learn cannot be undone. Sarah Mitchell was different from the others in Robert's world. She wore simple cotton dresses and had a genuine smile that reached her hazel eyes. Her honey blonde hair often fell in a loose braid over one shoulder. She worked as a kindergarten teacher, and when she spoke about her students, her whole face lit up with a tenderness that both attracted and frightened Robert. They met at a friend's gallery opening. While others discussed market trends and portfolio diversification, Sarah stood quietly before a painting of children playing in a garden. Robert found himself drawn to her peaceful presence. "It reminds me of recess," she said softly when he approached. "Pure joy before we learn to complicate things." They dated for 18 months. What? Sarah never asked Robert to change, never demanded more of his time than he could give. She seemed content with simple pleasures. Walks through Central Park. Sunday morning pancakes, old movies on her worn couch. When she told him she was pregnant, Robert's first response wasn't joy. It was fear. "I need time to think," he said, and those words would haunt him for years to come. Sarah looked at him with those gentle eyes now filled with tears. "What's there to think about, Robert? Either you want this family or you don't." "It's not that simple," he insisted. "My company is expanding. I have obligations, responsibilities." "So do I," Sarah said quietly. "But I'm not walking away from them." The argument that followed wasn't dramatic or loud. That might have been easier. Instead, it was heartbreakingly civil. Sarah didn't beg or plead. She simply said, "I won't force you to be somewhere you don't want to be." Robert left that evening and told himself he'd made the practical choice. He buried himself in work, convinced himself that some people weren't meant for family life. Months passed, then years, but success, he discovered, is a hollow companion in the quiet hours of the night. 4 years later, Robert found himself in an airport on a Tuesday afternoon. He had just closed a deal in Chicago and was heading back to New York. The terminal was crowded with travelers, businessmen checking their phones, families juggling luggage, the usual chaos of modern life. That's when he saw her. Sarah stood near the departure gates, and time seemed slow. She looked much the same, that same gentle beauty, though perhaps a bit more confident in the way she carried herself. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore a comfortable cream-colored dress. But she wasn't alone. On each side of her stood a little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Identical twins with curly blonde hair and pink backpacks. They each held one of Sarah's hands, and Robert watched frozen as one of them pointed excitedly at an airplane through the window. His heart recognized them before his mind could process it. Those were his daughters. He knew it with absolute certainty. The man walking beside them was tall, well-dressed, in a dark suit. He carried a small rolling suitcase and had the easy manner of someone comfortable in his role. When one of the girls stumbled slightly, he was there instantly steadying her with a gentle hand. Robert felt something crack inside his chest. He stood there hidden partially by a pillar, watching the life he had walked away from. Sarah laughed at something one of the girls said, and the sound of it, that warm, genuine laugh he remembered, cut through him like a blade. For a long moment, Robert considered turning around, walking away again. After all, they seemed happy. What right did he have to disrupt that? But then he thought of his mother's words when she was dying 2 years ago. "Don't wait until it's too late to become the person you were meant to be," she had whispered. "Pride and fear make poor companions in old age." Robert took a breath and stepped forward. "Sarah," he said softly as he approached. She turned and her face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, uncertainty, something that might have been old pain, but then it settled into a calm neutrality. "Robert," she said simply. The girls looked up at him with curious eyes. His eyes were, he realized, green with flecks of gold. I didn't mean to intrude. Robert began his rehearsed speeches, abandoning him. I saw you and I. The man in the suit stepped closer, protective but not aggressive. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. It's all right, Daniel, she said gently. Robert felt a stab of jealousy, but forced himself to speak. I'm sorry. I know I have no right to approach you. I just wanted to say. He looked at the girls, then back at Sarah. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. For not being brave enough. For not being the man I should have been. One of the girls tugged on Sarah's dress. Mommy, who is this? Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. This is an old friend, sweetheart. Actually, Daniel said, surprising everyone. Maybe it's time we had that conversation you've been thinking about, Sarah. Sarah looked at him gratefully, then back at Robert. Why don't we sit down for a moment? They found a quiet corner of the terminal. The girls, Emma and Lily, were quickly absorbed in coloring books that Daniel produced from his bag with practiced ease. Daniel is my husband, Sarah said, answering Robert's unasked question. We've been married for 2 years. He's been a wonderful father to the girls. Robert nodded, finding it hard to speak past the lump in his throat. I'm not here to disrupt your life, Robert finally managed. Over these years, I've had a lot of time to think, to realize what I lost, what I threw away. Sarah's expression softened slightly. We all make mistakes, Robert. We're all afraid sometimes. But I let fear win, Robert said. I chose a corner office over a family. And for what? So I could eat dinner alone every night? So I could have no one to call when something good happens? Daniel spoke then, his voice kind. Look, I don't know what you're hoping for here, but these girls deserve stability. Sarah has built a good life. I know, Robert interrupted gently, and I can see they're loved. I'm not trying to take anything away. I wanted Sarah to know that I was wrong, that there hasn't been a day in 4 years when I haven't regretted my choice. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching her daughter's color. Then she said, You know what I've learned, Robert? That love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I know that now, Robert said. Daniel showed up, Sarah continued. When Emma had pneumonia at 18 months, he was there through every long night. When Lily needed speech therapy, he learned the exercises with me. That's what love looks like. Robert felt tears prick his eyes. I understand, and I'm glad they have that. Truly. Emma looked up from her coloring book. Why is the man crying? Mama Sarah smiled sadly. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're thinking about important things, honey. They talked for another 20 minutes. Sarah told him about the girls' personalities, Emma's love of books, Lily's fascination with butterflies. Daniel shared a funny story about a tea party that had ended with frosting in his hair. Robert listened, storing away these details like precious treasures. When their flight was called, Sarah stood. I'm glad we ran into you, Robert. I mean that. I've carried some anger for a long time, and I think maybe I can let that go now. Thank you, Robert said. For even talking to me, for raising 2 beautiful daughters, for being strong enough for both of us. Sarah paused, then said something that would stay with him forever. You know, it's never too late to become who you want to be. Maybe you weren't ready to be a father then, but that doesn't mean you can't be ready for something meaningful now. As they prepared to board, Daniel turned back. Look, I don't know what the future holds, but if you're serious about wanting to be in their lives in some capacity, Sarah has my email. Think about it. Really think about it. And if you decide you're ready to show up consistently and genuinely, then maybe we can talk. Robert watched them disappear down the jetway. Emma turned back once and waved a simple gesture that broke and healed his heart simultaneously. On the flight home, Robert stared out the window at the clouds. He thought about his mother's words, about Sarah's forgiveness, about Daniel's unexpected grace. He thought about 2 little girls who didn't know him but carried his eyes. And he thought about the difference between success and significance, between achievement and purpose. When he landed in New York, Robert didn't go to his office. Instead, he went home to his empty apartment and sat in the silence. Then he opened his laptop and began to write an email he had been composing in his heart for 4 years. Some mistakes cannot be undone, but perhaps with humility and genuine change, they can be redeemed. Perhaps it's never too late to choose love over fear. Perhaps second chances are not just given. They are earned through patience, consistency, and the courage to become better than we were. Robert didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. And sometimes hope is where healing begins.